Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in awe. Keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quest for the true. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, giving thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end.
Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Community Church. Our building is out on Shaver Road in Portage, Michigan. It is on the ancestral lands of the Peoria Potawatomi people. We take a moment to pay our respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. Ours is a little brick building with a rainbow flag and a Black Lives Matter banner out the front, because we believe love is love, and it is our responsibility to dismantle white supremacy and work to build a beloved community that benefits us all. My name is Miriam Epskamp. I'm the Director of Religious Education for Children and Youth, and it is my pleasure to be your lay leader this morning. We'll be joined a little bit later by Amanda Nelson, a member of a youth group, who's going to help us out as well. This Unitarian Universalist community is a community on diverse spiritual journeys. Most Sundays we're served by our consulting minister, the Reverend G. Ludwig McCartney, but we also enjoy hearing differing points of view from guest ministers, members from the community, lay leaders from the congregation, and like this morning, guest speakers from far afield. If you are joining us on Facebook for the first time, welcome. We're excited that you tuned in. We invite and encourage you to join us later during coffee hour via Zoom to get us to know us better. You will find a link to the Zoom room in the chat of this video. To learn more about our church, our programs for children and youth, and other ways that you can connect with us during the week, visit our website at www.uucommunitychurch.org. Special thanks to everyone who is helping make this morning's service possible. Our musician, Nick, our tech team, and you. Welcome.
On this day, around the world, Unitarian Universalists light the chalice. We are truth seekers. We seek a truth that is so strong it can withstand our questioning and our doubts. The flame reminds us of what we have in common here, and so we bring it to life. In the light of truth, in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share.
It is hard for me to believe that it has been almost 15 years since I first met Tess and Adele Johnson. Adele might not realize it, but she was an unwitting test subject for the very first curriculum I wrote as a newly minted Unitarian Universalist Director of Religious Education all those years ago. She survived the coming of age classes that I authored, and it doesn't seem like I've done her any long-lasting spiritual damage. Tess, I got to know a little bit better because she was very active in our youth group during middle school and high school. And I remember her helping to write some very funny movies. I remember her playing energetic games in the basement during our sleepovers. And I remember her painting the ceiling in the room that's now my office. When I look up and I see the tile that says, "Practice makes better," it reminds me of her, and I am inspired. After graduating from the Coming of Age program at UCC, Adele went off to Columbia College in Chicago, and she now works in communications at the Metropolitan Family Services, a social service nonprofit empowering families and communities across Chicago. Tess left Portage for Grinnell College in Iowa, and after graduating, she spent some time working at a veterinary clinic in Seattle and decided to move to the UK to study veterinary medicine at the University of Glasgow in Scotland. She plans to graduate in 2021 and will likely move back to the US to work with small animals. As you can see, Tess and Adele have sheltered in place and learned to adapt during the time of COVID in places that are a lot different than our Portage home. We're interested to hear their experiences and what they think about what we should do going forward. Welcome, Tess and Adele.
Thank you, Miriam. That was a lovely little introduction and a few things that I had even forgotten about. We'll start with just a couple of readings to kick us off here this morning. The man rolls over onto his back, face to face with the morning sky. The messages swarm around him. Even here, homeless, he thinks, nothing will be the same. The spruces answer, nothing has ever been the same. We're all doomed, the man thinks. We have always all been doomed, but things are different this time. Yes, you're here.
Isn't that lovely? This one is just a quote from Jane Addams. What, after all, has maintained the human race on this old globe, despite all the calamities of nature and all the tragic failings of mankind, if not faith in new possibilities and courage to advocate them?
Nothing like a good Jane Addams on a Sunday morning or afternoon, as the case would be. So Adele, do you want to start by
kind of launching into our our talk here? We're excited to be here. Thank you all for being here. It's great to see so many people that we knew 15 years ago, and kind of talk about what we've done since then. I know Baby Sister has been particularly active, moving all over the country and all over the globe. I have been right here in Chicago this whole time. I work at, like Miriam said, at Metropolitan Family Services, which is a social services nonprofit. So for my job, I would say I have the best job there because I get to talk with everybody across our agency. It's about 1,100, 1,200 staff, and we have centers across Chicago, and so many programs in education, emotional wellness, economic stability, and empowerment. So I what everybody is doing and then talk about why it's making a difference, which is very cool to me. And as a nonprofit, we have definitely felt the brunt of COVID, but we're really working through it. And I think that's part of what we wanted to talk about today is sort of some of these inequities, but then also opportunities that COVID has exposed, and kind of talk about moving forward, how we can all sort of learn and build on what we've learned to sort of create a more inclusive normal as we all start to sort of return to the way things are as things are starting to reopen. So before we do that, baby sister, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. I just very much enjoy how comfortable you are with my nickname of baby sister.
Oh, sorry. This
It's
is
totally
Tess.
fine. We are all friends here. We are all family here. I have a very long-standing appreciation and respect for and connection to the Unitarians, having been dedicated in a UU church, and then obviously having spent a large portion of my formative years at UUCC. I had a minister at our parents' new current church tell me the first time I went that he couldn't stop staring at me during his sermon because I just looked so peaceful and in awe. So I am always happy to be back in a familiar UU space. Miriam did a pretty good job updating you on where I currently am. It's been very interesting for me to see COVID and the related experiences the world's been having from a different country than where I am naturally a citizen. It's been a really good chance to have a sort of forced international perspective on the events and kind of a almost more bird's eye view of the States as I've been getting my my updates in news primarily. So Adel, do you want to kick us off with what COVID has been like in your particular area?
Yeah, sure. In my neck of the woods, Chicago is obviously, we've really seen the importance of, I have a biased view here, but we've seen the importance of social services, housing, employment, mental health, really these sorts of things that hospital workers, things that have seemed so taken for granted before. We've seen a lot of course, like everybody, we've been, honoring our essential workers and our heroes. And we've seen a lot of uncertainty, like everybody else, around everybody's going to get back to things, how everybody's, restaurants need to open, hair salons need to open. I personally am very excited for when the lakefront opens. So things like that, everyone's sort of trying to plan for something that you can't really plan for. So that sets sort of an odd groundwork. But in our city and our state, I have been reasonably impressed with the response, actually. Our governor has been following health guidelines to the letter and has been really, I think, good at making sure that everybody stays on track, and with the reopening plan, making sure that we're keeping science as our guide. Our mayor has been similar. There's been a great meme going around Chicago of her. She was at a press conference and looked just very stern. And so people have been printing out cardboard cutouts of her and putting them in our windows. So everyone will stay home and save lives. And they're just, so she's been good about, in that respect, at least, about, making sure that everybody stays home and wear your mask and all that. So hopefully we can sort of start to reopen in a smarter way. And then my agency has been a little, because there's so many different programs and so many different needs of staff and clients, it's been quite a process to sort of incorporate everybody into how we move forward. We thankfully have not had any COVID at our agency, knock on wood. And so our leadership has been trying to communicate just in as direct a way as possible and as specialized a way as possible to really help people understand why things are the way they are, and what hopefully is going to happen, although none of us really know what's going to happen. So what's it been like over there?
Well, over here, we certainly have had similar kinds of experiences of this pandemic exposing a lot of inequalities that were previously obviously known, but maybe not quite as focused on as they should be. We're obviously very fortunate to all have universal health care. Even I am a part of the National Health Service, which I'm forever grateful for. I paid them a couple $100 on my way in, and they will give me as many, as much COVID treatment support as I need. And so the country is really unified around the NHS. We actually, every Thursday for a number of months, everyone stood outside their doors and clapped for the NHS. And so I think feeling that unification has really helped with the exposure of inequities, and that when you're feeling unified with your neighbor, somehow that seems to bring out kind of highlight those issues a little bit more. And so we experience similar inequities like every city, if you have public transportation or you don't, or you have a steady job or you don't, or do you have access to childcare or you don't, there's lots of those kinds of issues. Within the university that I'm a part of itself, those are aspects of people's lives that I think have an even wider range because we come from so many different countries. There's a large portion of international students here. And so we've had, the university has been definitely trying to manage COVID on quite literally an international scale, just to ensure that it's supporting all of its students in the best ways that it can. But it's obviously, as working directly with inequities in a very, very diverse area. It's not entirely easy. Do you want to talk?
Perspectives you have to kind of account for, right?
Absolutely.
Seeing our staff, because I get to talk a lot with our staff and kind of understand how they're responding. What do they need? What can we be highlighting to make sure that we're sort of telling the real story of our organization? You hear a lot about inequities and things that people need that I wouldn't have thought of, that our staff necessarily wouldn't have thought of until all of a sudden we're all sheltering in place. Things like our early childhood staff will do wellness check-ins with clients, just to call once or twice a week to make sure that everybody has what they need. And they're finding things like, oh, I can't participate in remote learning because I don't have a computer, or I don't have internet access. Things like that hadn't been an issue until we're all trying to shelter in place. Or we have services for older adults, and isolation is a huge concern. People in nursing homes or older adults who may be living alone. And when we're checking in on people, we're finding that isolation, this has been exacerbated because they really can't go anywhere now. And people have been saying they feel like nobody's calling in to check on them, or sometimes when our staff calls, that's the only call they receive all week. And then things like just supplies. If you're sheltering in place, how do you go get groceries? Things like that. That even though people may not be in that category of essential worker, which of course brings its own level of stress, and we do have folks that are on the front lines, but it's affecting everybody in such a different way. It's affecting me, for example. I love to swim and I haven't been able to, so and for me, feeling a little bit of guilt around like, here's everything that I do have and all the privileges that I do have. So feeling bad is really not the end of the world, but talking with people on the front lines like this really does help kind of put things into perspective. And it's really shown me the importance of doing what we can to address this, right? Not seeing it as, oh, here's a barrier, but how do we approach that barrier, right? Like, what do people need to get them on equal footing? And I know that you have been doing a lot of that as the student rep of your school. I bet, like, making people feel heard, right? It's just, we can't cater to what everybody needs, but making people feel like they have a voice is such an important aspect of how we start to move forward, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you have definitely brought out something that I have been really appreciative during this whole experience, in that you've been reminding me this entire time that there are, this is, I mean, I want to qualify this as this is a very bad situation for everybody, but there are good things coming out of COVID. And that, I mean, even just, on a personal level, I mean, you have found other ways to exercise outside of swimming. By gosh, you'll get in some exercise. And, there's all sorts of ways that we're having to get back in touch with our self-care and get creative about how we interact with other people. And I mean, I have connected with people from high school who I haven't spoken to in 10 years, because it feels like this chance to, not only do we have more time, obviously that's part of it, but this has almost been a reminder, as you're saying, to reach out and listen to your fellow people. What do people around you need? What are their circumstances like? And it's very natural to start with the people that we know, and then the people that we used to know and haven't spoken to in a while. And I feel like if we're really going to carry this forward, we extend that to the people that we don't know, the other people in our community, the people who aren't even in our communities. You have definitely, I feel like, done a tremendous job of finding the positives in this situation, not only in kind of, I mean, we talk all the time about what is it that that you have found in COVID that you didn't know before, that that you're going to be able to carry forward, or you always remind me about the perspective of something that you thought you were going to miss, but you don't actually miss that much, and that maybe that's something superfluous in your life. And even
people that you're going through the motions with, it really helps you, like, what is important to me, what is important enough to hang on to it in this context.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's given us a chance to center ourselves a little bit more. And I really do believe that if we're caring for ourselves, then we're able to extend that care into the world a little bit more, and I think what's the other kind of positive that we can take out of this is just this exposure of inequities that is, I mean, as you said, they're always there. They're going to keep being there. And if there is something to really shine a spotlight on that and help direct other people to, some of these things that are going on in our society, that we can't just sit back and watch. I mean, I know that as it's sort of hard to talk about the pandemic without mentioning the Black Lives Matter movement, that has really taken the stage a bit as well. I mean, I know that I've participated in a distance protest here. I know that you've been doing a lot of that in Chicago. How have you seen that play out in COVID?
Wearing masks while protesting is not something that I thought would be part of my 2020, but here we are. Our agency has a violence prevention program, and it's been really fascinating to see our street outreach workers adapting to this. Really, it's they do a lot of violence intervention with street involved youth. So these are people who have been street involved before and have sort of found this better way of life. They've turned their lives around and are now working toward positivity to really kind of help understand that that gangs are not your only future, and so the work that they do in the communities, the relationships that they build, are so critical in this Black Lives Matter movement, just because when our communities feel like they aren't being listened to, and we've talked about how important it is to make people feel heard, but these communities are so disinvested, and people have really lost the trust of authorities. So when police come in, or when our government tries to tell people to wear a mask, they don't, there's no reason to listen, or, so that it actually, those people that we work with that really have built relationships there are uniquely positioned to deliver information like, no, it really is important to wear a mask. it really is important to fill out your census, you know, and it's sort of, that's another thing that we've learned as people are sheltering in place. They are out there and they're not sheltering in place, obviously, but they can go and safely deliver messages to people who may not have internet access, or to people who may not, you know, just be in that sphere. It's all about meeting people where they are. And they also have the opportunity to listen to these people, to what do you guys need? How can we sort of broker unity, you know? And that, I think, really does extend to all of this racial unrest, as diplomatic a way as I can put it. But it's been interesting to see how we can kind of pivot. Here's this awful situation. What can we build on? What can we learn from it, so that as we're kind of re-emerging, let's not forget these people as we are moving forward. Like, let's take them with us. Let's support them as we are rebuilding our society from COVID. And hopefully that is that level of listening, I think, can work on a lot of different levels. Like mental health, for example. We have people who are, we have social workers who are trying to build trust with somebody through a screen. Like, this works because I already trust you. But if you're new, you know what I mean? It's hard to say like, oh, hi, we're both on our computers in our homes. Have you seen things like that? Like, I know that you've been working a lot with students trying to communicate a student perspective, and you first have to figure out what that is, and then have package that in a way that's going to be effective for your school to take forward.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree that it's just a more difficult platform on which to really make people feel heard and trusted and listened to. And I mean, I feel like, I mean, like you said, you feel like you have the best job ever, that you just get to go talk to people and find out what cool things they're doing. And, you know, and so, I mean, I'm oftentimes also hearing things like, the school should be doing this better. But even when there is, I mean, even when there's stronger emotions and a little more negativity than that, it's still such a wonderful opportunity to hear ideas from other people and start to try to coalesce them. And exactly, absolutely, yeah. I mean, even on the staff side of things as well. I mean, I'm primarily serve as a student rep, but I'm really acting as a liaison, because seeing all of the tremendous amount of work that the staff is putting into supporting one another and supporting students, it's seeing kind of how we come out of COVID in such a smaller community has kind of given me an appreciation for how we have to do that as a wider society. You know, I mean, just within a university, you have to start thinking about supporting people who are, you know, shielding and unable to start emerging as early as everyone else. And you have to think about the people who are disadvantaged and who, you know, if we're going to be in more of an online setting, as you say, who don't have access to internet. And I mean, all of these things are very, very applicable on the society level. And once you get into the society level, there's so many more factors to consider on top of all of it. But it's it's kind of daunting in a way to be thinking about how do we move forward. Just blanket, okay, here we have society and we have this. It feels like we're sort of starting from the ground up in a lot of ways, and in many ways, even though that's daunting, I sort of hope we are, because I think it's a really great chance for us as society to sort of tear it back down to the bricks and start over. Even though it's such a big task. And I was actually a few weeks ago, Dad did a sermon at their church, and he was talking essentially about love and about how love is such a powerful thing, and it is made so much more powerful when we seek that and find that within ourselves. In that you know, so many people think, well, it's selfish to be focusing on myself, and and repairing myself when so many other people need this help. But I mean, we have to put our oxygen masks on ourselves before we can help others. And I really believe that when we find that love and peace within ourselves, that we can expand that and help others find that within themselves. And if they can't find it within themselves, at least, they've got us. It's
provide the opportunities, right? Like, and
yeah.
you make a really solid point how societal change can happen, but it starts on that person to person level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have a conversation with somebody about how do you seek a job online? Like how can we take a program or university policy that is not currently set up online or in this sort of way that is accessible for people? How can we reframe that? Like how can we not just, let's try and translate this as closely as possible to online, but how can we look in a broader way, listening to people just like this about what they need and how can we provide that? And then that sort of starts, it kind of builds from there, right? We can sort of be incorporating what people think and coming from a place of how can we support people. That seems really powerful. So I guess to that end, we are really, that's sort of what we've been getting at, is that ourselves, we can be the solution, right? We can be a part of the solution. And I think, racial justice and COVID are so intertwined, I think, just because of, if COVID has exposed inequities, then all the protests certainly have as well. And so little ways that we can all be a part of the solution, I guess. What do you think there? What are some, if you could give some people advice based on what you've been doing and what you've been seeing, how can people help?
It feels like the $1 million question, doesn't it?
That's why I asked you first.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see what I come up with and then just sort of expand on that.
Copy it.
Well, that right there may even be a pretty solid strategy of listening to other people and taking that forward. Hey, look at that. See how I just did that? I think so much of it does start with taking a look at yourself and your impact on the world. There's that sounds so very simple, but I think we really have no way of comprehending the true impact that we have on other people around us. We have, the other people in our lives, but you walk down the street and somebody kind of flashes you a smile, whatever, because you're just passing them. That can have a huge impact on your day. If you're having a bad day, you're feeling lonely, whatever, you see a stranger just gives you a, hey, how's it going? And that can have a huge impact. And that person is never going to understand that, And I think that a lot can be done from just being more intentional about the impact that you have on the world. And I think right now we can really, I think it's sort of all of our responsibility to try to direct some of that intention in terms of, racial justice and in terms of all of the inequities that COVID has exposed, and just generally speaking, trying to maintain this kind of community sense that COVID has created. I feel like it's created a lot of divisions, but at the same time, this is a unifying event. It's entirely bringing together every person on the planet. And I feel like that is what we need to be tapping into, to redirect our intention toward all of these other people that we can now feel this connection with. I feel like just really being it, and it doesn't even have to be big things, because again, these are such big concepts. It's so hard to say, how do I go out in the world and just be a better person, but it's the small, you are constantly educating yourself by reading and donating to various racial justice reforms that need support. And I've been trying to take your lead, but you you leave some impressively large shoes to fill. But I've been finding little opportunities to show the guy next to me that they're valued, and hopefully, they'll show the guy next to them.
Yeah. Well, and that's such a great, we're all in this together, right? I feel like it's almost become just sort of a refrain that, we're all together. Like I don't want it to lose its meaning, like I'll talk with staff, I'll talk with clients about how they're doing, just checking in, and that check-in can mean a lot. But then hearing people talking about how, oh, we as a group, we figured out what to do, or my coworkers have been really supportive of me, or a client gave me this great idea and we're going to try and make it happen. And it's people who are going above and beyond, responding in a way that just really impresses me. Everyone has been positive, or in my sphere at least. That may not be true about angry students who want their tuition reduced, but it's things like, okay, here's this thing that somebody needs, how are we going to get it? And so little steps like that. And in your own life, what does that look like? How am I going to make myself feel sane when I can't go swimming? And I think part of that is checking our own privilege, which is sort of where, again, racial justice comes into it, is reading about how can I be a better ally to Black, Indigenous, people of color communities? How can I be a better ally to people in need in general? There's so many connections there. And part of that is, let's not center ourselves, although we've been talking now for 20 minutes, so we should probably end soon, but how we understand how we can use our privileges to really affect some positive change. Yeah. Are we at time? I don't know how long we've
Yeah, I think so.
People need to go about their Sunday? Well, I will end with saying thank you all for this opportunity. It's been really fun to basically just talk with you about about what we can do to help these days. But yeah, thanks so much. And do you have any sort of parting words?
No, I would echo. It's been a lot of fun. This is obviously a topic that clearly we could go on talking about forever. And I think I would just challenge everybody to just think, one way that they can connect with themselves a little better, and one way that maybe they can reach out and connect with their neighbor a little bit better. And I think that, just small little grassroots changes like this, I think it sort of has to start there. And I think we're in for a long journey ahead of us, but I hope we're up to the task. So yeah, no, I really appreciate being able to come here and chat and hopefully see some people at coffee hour.
Yeah, so thanks so much, guys. Yeah.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these vibes. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time. We shall be known by the company to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Our lives have been graced by many gifts. If you desire and are able to donate to our church, which still has the same expenses as pre-COVID, there are a few ways to do that. You may mail a check to our building. You may give electronically through our church website, or you can give using the Give Plus app on your smartphone or tablet. Your donations are sincerely appreciated and allow us to continue carrying on.
As our service comes to an end today, I would like to thank Tess and Adel for joining us. It was wonderful to listen in on your conversation. Loved your enthusiasm, your positivity, and your message that we are all in this together, all of us in partnership, in community, with love, can change the world. So now let us extinguish the chalice and remember to keep the flame and all that it stands for alive in our hearts. If you are willing and able, please join me in the words that we say each week. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We are never complete, we are never finished, we are always yet to be. May we allow others to be and help and enable each other to grow towards all that we are capable of becoming.